Hello, Club Familia members. Welcome to our 2025 spring release tasting. I'm here with my brother Mike and our wonderful winemaker James MacPhail. And we're actually here at his winery in Hillsburg. And this is where all the magic happens. And we like to take you out in the vineyard sometimes and educate you, but we thought this is a great opportunity to come to little James's Oasis here, and just so you can see where it all, basically, the magic comes to be. And James, maybe I'm going to talk about your wonderful spot. I mean, it actually lives on property, so we appreciate that. Mike and I know really well living next to where we work.
Yes.
So maybe tell us a little bit about Grapewagon.
Sure. So this facility was built in 2008, and I built it specifically for high-end production of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So it's got all the Gucci, all the fancy bells and whistles. There's pretty much nothing that we can't do, but this facility is primarily where all the Sangiacomo wines are made, and it's not as sexy as it sounds. It's 50 feet off the laundry door, and we got our global headquarters, the office there in the middle, but it's a great spot.
Yeah, so we are so fortunate. Our first vintage was 2016, and when we started, my brother Mike, sister, me, and I started the wine label, and we went to James, at the top list to make these wonderful wines, and he was full. It was in such demand that we went on a waiting list to get in your winery. Three vintages. We had to kind of bounce around the county, and then we finally, the kind of space opened up here, and there's no better place for our winemaker to make a wine than in his home, in his little baby. And you'll see behind us, we have the Sangiacomo barrels. This is from the 2024 vintage behind us. So with that, we're so excited to be tasting the 2023 vintage. So all the wines, your release, Club Familia members, will be 2023 Home Ranch, 2023 Carneros Chardonnay, the newest wine in our portfolio. The ever popular Petaluma Gap's coming back for its second vintage, 2023, and then the iconic and the highly sought after Block 11 Swan Clone from Roberts Road. So those are the four wines that are coming in your shipment. And with that, I think it'd be really apropos to talk about the 2023 vintage. So for us as growers, it was one of the harder vintages in terms of the length. The grapes hung out. It's one of the longest vintages growing seasons in probably the last 20 years. And with that, as all good things come to those that wait.
That's right.
So we got just enough heat during the growing season, and especially towards the later end of the vintage to get to perfect ripeness with all the skins and seeds. So I don't know, Mike, any thoughts on the 2023 vintage that stick out to you?
No, you just summed it up. Patience. There was some trials and tribulations of just anxiety. The stress wasn't there. There was no major event of heat or rain or anything like that, but it was just the anxiety of waiting. So, but as you said, patience, and turns out to be a good vintage.
Yeah, we call it a fleece vintage because the fleeces come out.
Okay, yeah.
The cold weather gear comes out, which is not typically our favorite to be in the winery, 18 hours a day in a little cooler environment. But the trade-off is you have absolutely beautiful wines.
So with that, let's get started.
Yeah.
First wine is 2023 Home Ranch. So Home Ranch is an iconic part of our vineyard portfolio because that's where this all started in 1927. Our grandfather bought the ranch, Home Ranch, and 55 and a half acre cherry, peach, and pear orchard. And then that's where the family ranch is. That's where the tasting terrace, all of you have been to the tasting terrace, you've seen that's our beautiful home ranch. And tons of memories. I think every time I drink this wine, I get family memories. So Mike, you want to talk about any family memories on the home ranch?
Sure, I have tons of them, but I'll talk about one we just came up the other day as just on a health thing. After our grandparents were obviously, their home is on the home ranch. So we spent a lot of nights with our aunt, when our parents left to spend the night. So after dinner, one of the real traditions she had is we did take a walk down to the creek, and it's a little over a half mile from the house to the creek, and just walking through orchards and vineyards at that time to get down into the creek and see the wildlife. It's just a relaxing time after dinner. And there's just the beauty of all that. And you really kind of there's a tranquility as you're walking back. In addition, looking back now at the time you didn't think, but it's a very healthy thing after a nice dinner to take a long walk and before you come back. So those are the beautiful things that I remember in the evenings there in the Home Ranch, just looking across the beauty of the vineyard and also, the beauty of the wildlife from the creek.
You've been making Home Ranch our Chardonnay. Yeah, this is
16 now.
16, the original vintage. This was part of the kickoff of Sangiacomo in 2016. So I think 8, this is the 8, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Yeah, I'm good at math. That's 8. This is the 8th release. Eighth release of Home Ranch.
So the first thing, there's going to be a theme with 2023, and that when I put my nose into this Home Ranch, there's a kind of a heightened sense of aromatics. We talked earlier about, of course, the fruit was on the vine for another extra 30 days. That allows development more compounds, both aromatic and flavor. So it's really, really expressive. A couple of things interesting. I see here the harvest dates was between October 7th and the 26th. I mean, that's crazy. Kind of takes us back to the old days.
Well, this is the first, remember, this is the first vintage, I believe, James, that we got the Home 82 in.
That's right, Home 82.
So included, we've always made it with the Old Wente block plant in 2012. And then 23, we took our second vineyard river plant, Green Acres Heritage Block, as you guys, all Club Familiar members know, it's part of 4 siblings. And then this Home Ranch is the second vineyard river plant we still have, and we got a little component to that.
Block 82.
Block 82.
Yeah. Planted in 1982.
Yeah.
So crazy. I mean, dates. Far into October, but it shows this really beautiful, again, very kind of heightened aromatics of kind of lemon zest and Bartlett pear, some green apple, a little bit of that kind of salinity, which I like. You get out of the Home Ranch, that kind of wet stone, granite. No real big changes on winemaking. Still, whole cluster pressed here, very small volumes, 2 tons, straight to French oak. But my favorite barrels went into a cigar. These are cigars. See how they kind of poke out a little bit more? They are 70 gallon versus a 60 gallon. And the whole point of these is that you get a little bit more lees contact. So a longer, barrel, more exposure to the lees. So still rich and creamy in the mid palate, weighty, kind of dense, but still really good acidity. I love this vintage.
Okay, we're moving on to our second wine, the 2023 Carneros Chardonnay. This is the first release ever of this Carneros Chardonnay. It's the newest one to our portfolio, and it's one that my brother and I always said we need to do a Carneros Chardonnay. So Carneros is where we kind of cut our teeth on growing wine grapes. 1969, the Carneros region was not formed until the 80s, but obviously we were farming there for through the 60s and 70s. And as the Carneros AVA was established in 1980, there was this influx of all these wonderful brands coming into Carneros and making these amazing Chardonnays that we learned how to grow grapes on, and we just saw this amazing potential that we could continue to evolve our vineyards and start planting, which we were planting Pinot Noir, and really it allowed us to really understand what Chardonnay was about and all the nuances and what makes Sonoma County, Sonoma Coast, Carneros, and obviously Rushmore, all these areas of Sonoma County, which makes Chardonnay flourish here in our beautiful county. So this Carneros vineyard is made up, it's our Keyser vineyard, and Mike, you want to talk a little bit about our Keyser vineyard and kind of what it kind of means to our family?
Yeah, Keyser, another great site for us. Is our, it's more of a Uchica clay loam series, very loamy in a lot of spots. A lot of our winery partners making some really great wines from it, and so, we had known this for a long time, and as we're kind of expanding some of our portfolio of wines here, it was certainly an obvious one that we thought, like, hey, this is going to be a great wine to include in our portfolio of wines, and there's, obviously, it's living up to exactly the expectations we thought. I mean, this is James, you're doing a great job with this one.
All right, so this report this second. So when I explained the Home Ranch, this Chardonnay kind of takes it up just a notch in richness and density. Still has great acidity, but there's more. You still get kind of like that very signature, Bartlett pear and the green apple, peach, kind of lemon zest. But there's also some really nice stone fruits. Again, a little bit of that kind of salinity, wet stone. But there's a richness to this wine that I really, really love. So it's a little bit of a departure, not a huge departure, but a little bit of departure of the other Chardonnays, and that it's just got a really nice weight to it. So great food wine, still really good acidity, but this was about 25% new French oak, so nice low percentage. Let the vineyard shine, let the fruit shine, speak for itself. I think you're really gonna like this.
A couple years ago, time's flying, I forget. We had a beautiful. We were selected as one of the top Chardonnay vineyards in the Wine Spectator, and it was amazing. We did a wonderful tasting with the Wine Spectator team, and just going through the evolution of Chardonnay, especially in California, all the way down to Sonoma County, and all the way down to our vineyards. And one thing that stuck out to me was the renaissance of Chardonnay. I mean, we talk about it all the time. When people come into our tasting room, I don't like Chardonnay, but I like yours. We're gonna make a t-shirt. And I think this just goes for ours. I'm just talking all these beautiful artistic Chardonnays that are coming out. There's a renaissance where people are just falling in love with them all over again. So maybe talk to your thoughts on how you make Chardonnay and just where Chardonnay is.
Yeah, no, I truly believe that there is a great renaissance going on here in California of letting the fruit shine, letting our incredible climate, our terroir shine through. I'm a big kind of old world Chardonnay fan. I love Chablis, White Burgundy, wines that are very authentic in recognizing the Chardonnay variety, not covered or masked with a lot of oak. There's no butter in any of these wines, also known as diacetyl acid. I don't let that happen in any of the Chardonnays. And so without that heavy influence of oak, without the diacetyl acid, aka butter, and also most importantly, no residual sugar in these wines. They're technically dry from residual sugar. So there's a real kind of authentic expression of Chardonnay that I think here in North America is one of the greatest places to grow Chardonnay and have that kind of old world expression, which we all love.
Okay, Club Famiglia members, we're moving on to our Pinot Noirs for the spring release, and we have two beautiful Pinot Noirs, the 2023 Petaluma Gap, which is back for its second vintage. 22 was our first release of it, and then the ever popular Block 11. So both of them are actually from the Petaluma Gap, so I think it's appropriate we talk a little bit about Petaluma Gap. So Petaluma Gap was, as an AVA, was formed in 2017. Our family has actually been farming in Petaluma Gap since 1990. So we developed a vineyard, our Lakeville vineyard, which is off Old Lakeville Road number 3, down in the southern portion of Petaluma. And we developed it in 1990. Kind of before, at that time, there was the history of that area goes back to Prohibition, and there was no Prohibition. Obviously stopped all the plantings down there. And then by the time we planted in 1990, there was just a handful of vineyards, and it's a great opportunity to, again, similar to hear our Robert Rose story. Our dad was friends with the Herzog family, who had a farm down there right on the southern portion, and they're interested in selling their land for vineyards, and deal was made, and the rest is history. So in 1990 we planted our first vineyard, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and then we planted in 1999 and 1998 across the street we planted our Frederick vineyard, which is a hillside vineyard. So this vineyard is made up of Lakeville, and our Frederick Vineyard, which is a beautiful western facing hillside, gets amazing sunlight. And then we have our Roberts Road Vineyard, which is in the Petaluma Gap. A lot of you Club Famiglia members know that. That's one of our iconic vineyards. We make a lot of different expressions of it. So it's roughly about, looks like almost a third, more or less, maybe a little bit more Lakeville. Thoughts overall on the Petaluma Gap, just as an AVA and wine?
Yeah, big fan, like you said. I mean, I love, that the AVA was created because of the wind, right? So we get a lot of that marine influence. It comes off the, Bodega Head, comes in the Gap. The valley smacks up against the west side of, Sonoma Mountain. But it's where the wind also comes in. So there is a distinction to the fruit that's grown in the Petaluma Gap. A little bit of a kind of a tougher skins, a little bit more structure, I feel. When I first put my nose in this wine, this reminded me of, we all remember the great I Love Lucy episode, right? Where she's, jumping up and down in a wooden vat of something. But imagine it if that was full of Bing cherries. And she was jumping up and down, and it was just the aromatics of Bing cherry, kind of like red plum. It's just kind of an explosion in the glass. But yeah, nice spice with a bit of sassafras, baking spice into it. And then you get a little bit of those kind of cool climate characteristics that talked earlier about, a little bit of that, like that salinity in the Chardonnays. You also get a little bit of that, it's like almost like a little foggy, misty element in the wine as well. Maybe that's power of perception in Petaluma Gap, I don't know. But it's a beautiful, I think it's a beautiful expression of Petaluma Gap. I think you're really gonna enjoy it.
There's a touch of it. It's very, you say plum, but it's a ripe plum, right?
It's a ripe plum.
It's a ripe plum. It's right on that edge of like, that allows for some structure, right? I mean, it's not overripe and so forth. And the finish is, so again, 2022 is our first so popular, especially our tasting room people still are coming in asking, do you have any more than 2022 Petaluma Gap? We quickly sold out of that, and we're so excited to release this, just because I think it's stylistically, it just adds to what makes Sonoma County so special. Okay, we're on to the final wine of our little tasting here for the 2025 spring release for our wonderful Club Famiglia members, and Block 11 is back. So this is our 4th release of Block 11, part of our Clonal series. This is original, the OG of the Clonal series. For those, we make a Block 20 and a Block 21 as well. Block 11 is our Swan clone. Again, another fan favorite. So before we get in on how this whole Clonal series began, we got took one late night and said, James, we have an idea for you. We're gonna make Clonal series wines. But Mike, you want to talk a little bit about Roberts Road and a little history of that with our family?
Love to. Roberts Road is obviously very special to us. The history is a friend of my dad's how we came to know about Roberts Road. A friend of my dad said, hey, Angie, you got to come over and take a look at this. I think it's a piece of property for sale next to me. I think it'd be a great piece to make, to grow grapes on and make great wine. And so my dad said, very nice. He said, okay, sure, where is it? And told him, and he said, okay, fine. And my dad kind of loaded us up and said, hey, we're going to go take a look at a piece of property. And we're excited. And we started saying where it was. And I said, I don't know, there's kind of in that area, there's a lot of heavy clay in that area. Not always the most ideal for growing wine grapes. We said, let's go over there. So anyways, we looked at the piece of property. It looked beautiful. It had a little, mostly flat, but had some nice slopes to it and stuff. So anyway, long story short, we agreed to do some soil tests to see, what is actually under the soil. So we actually turned out, after the soil test came back, we were surprised as just what alluvial soil there is. It really had very little clay, had some clay content, but a lot of rolled stock and gravel. I couldn't figure this out. So we started to talk to the neighbor, and it turns out that Copeland Creek was very erosive, and over the centuries it meandered across it. So it basically, from one end of the property to the end of the property, it kind of meandered over 100 years. So you ended up with a lot of silt and gravel and cobblestone, essentially. So we were obviously just lucky to stumble upon it, not stumble upon it, but be able to be introduced to. And then, anyways, at that point, after we saw the results, we said, this is going to make great wine. And we took a chance because the climate was on the cooler side. There wasn't a lot of vineyards in the area at that time. And anyway, since then, I'm gonna fast forward to this wine right here. You know, the wines have been great, and Steve's gonna talk a little about Block 11, our Swan clone.
With that, Roberts Road, you know, obviously we had, you know, James worked with it and early on, and it's become an iconic site. And you know, we have out there, we have 5 different clones out there, 6 to become TBD. There's a 6th one coming along. So each individual clone has its own expression. You know, James will talk about his winemaking, his philosophy, how he made it, and then we had this idea of like, let's take. We did have this idea of let's blend all 5 clones together and co-ferment them, and guess what? That's called 5 clone. For all you co-fermenters that have 5 clone, that was our just kind of vision for that. And then we had this, and actually it's more James. I'm gonna give. He's like, these single vineyard clones, some of them are just like amazing because we do a tasting together every year, which through each lot we taste each little lot separate. We learn about it. We, you know, kind of understand each site, each vineyard. And we taste it, and I think like some of these could be by themselves. And then boom, the clonal series came. So block 11 Swan, block 20 is 777, and block 21 is 115. So block 11, 4th iteration of it, tasting better than ever, James, in my opinion.
Sure is.
So Roberts Road, what, you know, besides meeting us, see, now you can
that's right.
your favorite.
I know.
It's your favorite vineyard because you met us, right?
No, it is. It really is one of my favorite vineyards because, like Mike and Steve said, it's a perfect confluence when we talk about terroir. It's the perfect confluence of all those elements. I find that it's the greatest wines really come. You can really narrow it down to a great site, and that site has to be almost perfect in soil, climate, topography, clonal selection, farming. Right, all those things come together, and that's what makes Roberts Road so special. So when we started the project in 2016, and Sangiacomo's wanted to start their own brand, and I was so excited because I was back in Roberts Road getting my hands on more clones than I was getting with MacPhail. This block 11, we had harvested on its own, and it stood out. I mean, it was special, and you know immediately when something is really special because it just checks all the boxes, hits all the notes. And this block 11, I think I'm not going to go as far as to say it may be my favorite because of that 23 vintage and you know the extended hang time. We harvested this on October 11th, which was what we used to do in the old days with Roberts Road. Was almost didn't really look at Roberts Road until October.
Maybe so it's a throwback vintage.
It is kind of a throwback vintage. But again, it's a really pretty departure from the Petaluma Gap that's got those really ripe red fruits. This is more, my gosh, it's got the beautiful combination of earth and fruit. You know, so there's more kind of like a mulled cherry. You know, you got baking spices, black tea, violet, but there's a really nice component of a little bit of like soil, forest floor, and it's one of those wines that just keeps going and makes you keep thinking about it. You know,
I just wrote down cerebral wine.
Absolutely,
I just wrote it down.
It's 100% cerebral wine because when you taste it, it's, you know, there's more questions than answers.
Exactly.
Right? It's like, wow, well, what's that? What's that? And it keeps lingering. It's just one of my favorites.
And it's like the fruit profile on like the viticulture side. Swan is, and Pinots are never, you know, as a variety is not the bigger producers. I mean, that's what, you know, part of the nuance and what, you know, what the vineyard or the variety makes it so special, right? Is you know, it challenges us through the whole year, and it just, you know, from a growing standpoint, it's, as people arguably say, it's the hardest variety to grow. It can be the hardest variety to make because it makes you focus so much on attention to detail. And that's my point. If you miss any detail step from growing it all the way through the finished product, it really shows the Pinot Noir.
And this is also very special because Swan does not grow everywhere. Even right here in ground zero of, you know, one of the greatest spots in the world for Pinot Noir, there's other spots that I know of that the Swan clone does not show as well as Roberts Road. And I think that just has to do with the perfect site.
I mean, how do you compare the Pinots of 23? We talked a little bit about the Chardonnays and and obviously there's expressive. I think insightful in the Pinot Noirs that with this vintage.
Very similar to the Chardonnays in that there's just an elevated aromatic complexity, and there's even more, I find, kind of flavor compounds. So I think when you the physiological ripeness of the vine, it's just a little bit slower when you have a cooler growing season, and it's allowed to stay on that vine for that much longer. It's going to develop that much, more, all those characteristics and components that we want in the wine. So as much as we kind of, tear our hair out about, being another month late and the fleece harvest and it's colder and everything else, you look back, this being my 30th harvest, I can pick out the vintages that were late that stood out. And there is a correlation between later vintages and the expressiveness of the wines, with all the heightened characteristics and a late harvest.
And it tested us. As our whole industry. Especially grape growers with our fruit sitting out there. As Mike alluded to earlier, the grapes were out there, and you're just praying every week there's not a rainstorm coming or something that can really, have a major negative impact on the harvest. And it was, obviously we had no choice in what happened. We had no control on what happened, but it was just, we were waiting, and then, obviously, as we said earlier, all good things that come to those that wait. So, like we told our kids, all good things, right? So there's a perfect example. Patience is a virtue. There's another one. Patience is a virtue. So, with that, we're so excited. I know, speaking for myself and my brother as alluded to earlier, and our sister Mia and wonderful winemaker James, we're so excited to get these 2023 wines to you guys. It's a great, just another, signature moment in our little wine journey here with Sangiacomo, of just this wonderful vintage that's coming to your homes and tables soon. So with that, we'd like to cheers to you guys. We hope you enjoy the wines. Come visit us in Sonoma, and even come visit James in Hillsburg too.
Yeah,
you're very welcome to come to Hillsburg and visit him as well. So cheers.
Cheers, you guys. Cheers.